I'm a businessman. I'm not a career politician. I had never envisioned myself getting in politics. I'm getting into politics because of the frustration, because of the fact that we need to have people in Washington, D.C. who understand how to run a business, who understand how to make a payroll, who understand what these healthcare issues are all about, because they've been there, they've seen it, they've had to supply healthcare for their employees, they've had to deal in the real healthcare system themselves, which nobody in Congress has to, and has a perspective that can allow them to make intelligent decisions, tough decisions, because we need to do that. If you take a business analysis of the United States and you look at the situation we were in, and you look at the United States, the federal government, as if it were a business, and you look at the astounding debt level that we have now dug ourselves into, and you compare it over time, you'll realize that during World War II, even at the height of World War II, the national debt as a percentage of the gross domestic product was just a little over 100%, got almost about 120%. That meant that compared to that, the size of the debt that we had was the same size as all the goods and services produced in the United States in an entire year. If you put that on a corporate balance sheet, that is astounding. That would scare anybody to death. But that was World War II. You expect that. By the time the 50s were over, the size of the national debt as a percentage of the gross domestic product had dropped to closer to 20 or 30%. All right, that's still a phenomenal debt load. That's still extremely high numbers, but at least it's a lot less than what we're all producing. At that level, we could finance it through domestic sources, the U.S. bonds. People in the United States could buy enough savings bonds that they could finance the federal debt. If you look at the federal debt after the Johnson administration and the constant creep, and it really accelerates once you get to the Reagan administration, it starts going to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of the gross domestic product. It is way up there anymore. It is, if we add $1 trillion to the federal debt every year for the next 10 years, then from about 2012 on, it will exceed 100% of the gross domestic product. Unbelievable numbers. That means that we're not just technically bankrupt, we're amazingly bankrupt. Anybody looking at that. And at that level, we can no longer finance that amount of money through domestic resources. There is not enough money in the United States to carry that type of debt load. So who's going to carry it? Well, the Chinese, the British, all of the growing domestic companies. And back in the 80s, we were all terrified that we were going to owe the Arabs so much money because we were borrowing so much money from them, and they were reinvesting it in the United States, and they were going to own all the United States assets. Well, that's what's happening now. If any of those foreign countries decided to use that debt as a military weapon or as a strategic weapon and pulled back from the United States, and they would have plenty of reason to do that simply because they're afraid about whether we can pay it back. We're not generating enough money on a yearly basis to cover it within the next year. If they decided to pull it back, they could automatically propel the United States into the status of a second-class nation. We wouldn't have enough money to pay for a military. We would be at their mercy. And right now, there are very strong signs that that's exactly what's going to happen. We have to go begging to these foreign markets on a regular basis. Now, the Chinese, if you want to talk about the Chinese, sure, they're willing to look at it now because we're their largest market. If all of a sudden our stagnating economy just stays the way it is, and our interest rates and our inflation starts going out of sight, then we're not going to be buying as many Chinese goods from them, and we're going to have a little less punch with the Chinese. In addition, if we let inflation go out of sight, all we're doing is devaluing the money we owe them, and they're not going to be very happy about that. So there are no good scenarios to what we're facing in the next 10 years. None. We are going to be in a world of trouble, and we are going to be in a world of vulnerability if we don't change things now. There is only one solution. We have to stop the spending. We have to get the size of the federal government down to something reasonable. And it's going to take some hard-nosed business people who know what to do in those types of situations to do it. The politicians and the lawyers in Washington have obviously proven they don't have the guts, they don't have the intelligence, and they don't have the integrity to get that done.